Hello and welcome to the show. I'm here on GTA 5 for some more downhill chaos, and we start today with the Halloween special cars, the Franken Strange. I quite like this car. It's kind of a mashup of all sorts of vehicles stuck together. The engine is really quite cool. It wobbles around, it spits fire out of the side of it, which is always always good fun. It's a suitably crazy, really rather silly car. The rear tyres are massive, the front tyres are tiny. It's also quite powerful and rear-wheel drive, and that is something that becomes quite apparent quite quickly with this vehicle. This opening run got a little bit out of shape on the way through the first corner. The brakes aren't quite as bad as I was expecting. I was expecting quite awful brakes on this car. I actually did pretty well, but then I slightly dipped a wheel over the edge somewhere. That tipped it sideways. I definitely didn't save it, and then we kind of went round for a spin, and perhaps one of the least dramatic kind of crashes you'll see on this course. We went round for a little bit of a spin. It's actually a decently fast vehicle, this one. It certainly feels relatively quick on the acceleration front, and again you see these brakes, they were pretty impressive at getting it stopped. I mean, that is a steep hill that it was sliding down. We've seen quite a lot of cars, once they get sliding, you not be able to stop them. This does a pretty damn good job of getting slowed down once it does start plummeting. Yeah, I mean, there is some decent acceleration. It's not supercar levels of performance, but there is some decent acceleration in this one. Again, I may have pushed things a little bit too much. That's a very easy place to make mistakes through that section as we twist and turn and try to fight and get it under control again. It's twisted pretty much every which way, and I just about managed to fight it, and with a bounce off a bush, we get it under control-ish. Remarkably, this has got to be one of the easiest vehicles I've had to kind of regain control of when it starts falling off the mountain. It did really, really quite well. Again, we've got some oversteer. I was just trying to take that little bit too much speed over the jump there, and couldn't quite all gather it back up in time. It hasn't got the most grip available, certainly, and that's perhaps not particularly surprising when you consider, what it is that is being raced down, and I pushed it too hard over the jump. And this is the first time I got down to that part of the map. I thought I was going to have to go for it. I have to be a little bit more cautious on that, but again, it's remarkably composed for a hot rod, where when things go wrong, to kind of gather it all back up. It's not the composure I expected. I was kind of expecting more like the slam van, in all honesty, from this thing. That particular attempt, I tried to just carry too much speed, try to get away with a little bit too much. But again, after a couple of spins, I can get the car stopped and under control, which we haven't seen that for a while. A lot of the times when the vehicles go off the mountain, they are well and truly gone, and there is nothing you can do. But this was really rather impressive at getting it all back under control. It took a few attempts to get a decent run out of this vehicle. One thing you did have to be aware of, it's actually quite a long car, this one, and also the way the back wheels kind of jut out. I was always worried I was going to clip them on sight. You can kind of see they stick out a lot further than the front, so I was imagining that it would be quite easy to kind of clip it on the rocks and the kind of the fences and so on around. I never did on a run down here, but it was always a kind of a fear that I might. Also, it did not like the hairpin a huge amount. I struggled a little bit to get it through that particular corner. This time around, getting it slowed down enough for that jump. Dealt with the bumps actually pretty well. The Franken Strange had no real issues. I didn't have it launching the back of the car up into the air and wanting to get the car spinning. You could get it oversteering. You could get some sliding around with the car if you pushed it quite hard through the corners. It did go a little bit on two wheels at that particular point, and again we see that little bit of oversteer. This time slowing it down enough, getting it under control right on the limit through that section, very, very close to hitting the wall, making sure to avoid the bushes. And then it is up to this second to last corner. We're again slightly on two wheels through there, but nothing major. And around the final turn, we run a little bit wide. There's a mountain biker in the way. We may have slightly taken him out there. I couldn't see where they were as I came around that final corner, and I was pretty much committed to the line I was taking. Was already going a little bit wide. Didn't quite have the same grip in this as some cars have had, so yeah, we may have. He's fine. He's in the bush over there somewhere, calling the police to tell them that I may have slightly knocked him off his bike. But yeah, I quite liked it. I gotta say, I like the craziness of it. It actually did pretty well down the course. Up next, it was the Lurcher, a hearse version, essentially, of the Buccaneer. This one is, I quite like these vehicles. They're kind of a little bit of fun. I love that you can have a wheelie bar on it. A wheelie bar is not particularly good for going down Mount Chiliad, but if I can put a wheelie bar on a hearse, I'm going to put a wheelie bar on a hearse. So, yeah, there we go. That's why it's got that. We got the body in the waving as you go down the particular course. Now, this is a really quite long vehicle, especially with the added wheelie bar. The collision of the wheelie bar are a little bit odd. It doesn't kind of quite act how you might expect it. You will see it occasionally going through the floor, but it does add some length to the vehicle. And things were actually going pretty well on this first run. I was carrying quite a lot of speed through the course. Got a little bit of a slide, but could manage to carry it all through. Then we started bouncing from side to side, and I couldn't quite get it stopped. I wasn't positioned correctly for the jump, and that made things go a little bit wrong. It's a very fast section through there. Any slight error, and you're going to have a big off. I was also trying to stop the car. Nope. Nope, that was not going to be stopped from falling off that particular part of the mountain. Brakes on this, not as good as the Franken Strange, certainly. Next attempt, things were going all very wrong after turn one. Once you get at that turn one just a little bit wrong, you're kind of screwed because you end up having to correct, sort of overcorrect, trying to save it from going off at turn one, and then you're out of place for the next bit, and then I hit a rock, and now we're off down the mountain. Again, though, we see a similar story. It doesn't stop as well as the Franken Strange. Admittedly, the Franken Strange never quite went down this part. I did get it back under control, but yeah, the brakes in this were not quite as good as the other car. But yeah, managed to kind of get it to come to a rest. You've got to be careful with this course. It's something we've seen throughout the course of this series, really. You make one little error. It might not be the particular corner you made an error on that you have an accident, but it will be further down the line. It was another car. It was a little bit oversteering, not as bad as the Franken Strange. As I said with the wheelie bar, there is a small issue with it. You can get the car ever so slightly beached. We had to do some wiggling and some reversing, and eventually got the Lurcher just about freed. Also, this thing's got terrible diff. It just spins one wheel a lot of the time when it gets stuck. Almost identical crash to the Franken Strange through that section. Pushed it a little bit too hard, and this was a car that was a bit more difficult to drive, in all honesty. I did not particularly like this one as much as the Franken Strange. I think it was perhaps the length of the car. It just wasn't quite as nice. We didn't quite have the same brakes. Again, I mean, we see it is now going down exactly the same place the Franken Strange went, and we come to a rest just about in the same place, but it's nowhere near as controlled, and that spent a lot more time with the wheels on the ground trying to slow it down. It's just not quite. It's not bad at all, don't get me wrong, but it's just not quite as good as the previous one, and I may have carried that little bit too much speed. Always trying to get greedy, always trying to carry that little bit more speed down that course, down that part of the track, if you like, and the car just got bounced up back in the air, and then all the wheels are in the air. You're not going to be able to stop or steer, so yeah, that did not quite go to plan. We may have lost the back. Amazingly, the body and the coffin stayed well in the back of this vehicle. This time, I managed to balance things just about right, even with a little bit of a bump on the outside, but then, again, got just that tad too brave. It's only a few miles an hour too fast, slightly out of position, but at a course like this, that's all it takes. Just ran the banking on the inside. That launches the car up into the air, and you're not going to be able to stop it from tumbling down that section. As I said, it took a little bit longer with the Lurcher. It's quite hard as well for me to kind of describe why it was. It's just something about it. It wasn't as nicer a car to drive. It was one of these vehicles. I had a few of them over the course of this series. You can't quite explain why they're a pain in the arse to drive down Chiliad. They just kind of happen to be. You just make more silly little mistakes with them, and on a course like this, silly little mistakes end up in really rather large crashes. So yeah, it was a little bit of a faff. Amusingly, despite the fact that this is one of the longest cars I've had, the hairpin wasn't actually that bad. It got around this turn pretty nicely, which was an area I thought it may struggle. The Franken Strange didn't really like getting turned through the hairpin. Again, I mean, we have seen that before. Sometimes cars don't kind of respond quite as nicely if you try and tip them in on the handbrake. This was very, very good at getting around the turns in that particular manner. Or that is, the hairpin is the only place where you ever need to do that around this particular course. Then we start coming up towards the big jumps. Again, this is another vehicle dealt with the bumps pretty damn well. Had no massive issues apart from down here with the car lifting up on landing if you hit it too hard, but that's a thing for pretty much every single vehicle that's ever gone down this course if you try and take too much speed. This time I was a little bit more wary down this side road, made sure to get it just slowed enough to avoid running the bankings around a very, very bumpy second to last corner. And again, you see the Lurcher having no real issues, and around that final turn and across the line for the hearse. And they're on the brakes and we're not stopping, and the car is well and truly stuck in the mud. It is absolutely not going anywhere there. I'm trying to wiggle the steering, and it's not even rocking the car. And the wheelie bar has got the vehicle propped up. I mean, the wheelie bar, apart from there were two crashes, this one and one earlier, where it got the car stuck. Aside from that, it didn't actually make any bloody bit of difference to this vehicle. So it was just for reasons of having a wheelie bar and a hearse. But yeah, we got a little bit stuck. And our final vehicle is the Faction. As I didn't get to do this with the lowriders last time out, I thought I would bring it out today. This is almost as low as the bloody Voodoo. I didn't realise quite how much this car was got lowered. I do have one of these on the Xbox One version of GTA 5. I didn't realise just quite how low this vehicle got. So I thought we'd send this one down. Now we saw last time out with the Primo, when you raise the suspension up, it had a tendency to fall over. So this one was going with the full lowrider suspension with its under tray pretty much scraping the floor. It can do a little bit of flamethrower down the side exhaust, or kind of side exhaust. They kind of point out. It's kind of a TVR exhaust at the back of this. Kind of point out diagonally at the back. It's strange positionings, but there we go. Yeah, this car, much like I expected with the Voodoo, I expected there to be problems. Certainly the Faction has had issues. The standard car, the front will kind of get launched in the air if you go over a curb or something. It's very peculiar. I'm not sure that's been patched, but certainly the first few days it was having massive issues with the front of the car being launched up. And on this opening run, I actually made a silly little mistake, tried to cut the corner a little bit too much, clipped a rock face. And I was kind of fearing that we were going to have the front of the car being launched up, but that wasn't the issues. I tried to get on the brakes. I kind of braked a little bit too late, and then trying to avoid the hikers and get a better line through that corner. I got it wrong under brakes, and then you're not stopping in the car. Once you kind of committed into that section, it's a very, very steep downhill bit, so you've got to get things right. And well, as you can clearly see, I did not. Unlike the two lowriders, I think, that I exploded down in that particular place, the Faction managed to survive. Didn't take quite as heavy a hit on that part of the course. Yeah, I had no problems with the suspension on this car, apart from out of the second to last corner, but everywhere else this was absolutely fine on the most part. I mean, we got bounced up in the air there and carried wide, but when we saw that happen with the Lurcher, we've seen it happen with many vehicles. There were no specifically bad problems for this car, despite it being as ridiculously low as it is, and it actually drove really nicely. It drove really nicely down this course. Having said that, again, it's just these, trying to carry that little bit more speed. The Coyote's fine. He's off. He's running down the mountain there. He's just try to push, see what the car can do, and slightly outbrake yourself into the corners and so on. And that's what can often cause these big spectacular rolls. But on the whole, I was very, very impressed. I mean, this is a bumpy section that the car is going down, and it's incredibly low vehicle. And not a problem is caused with all of that. But again, we've got decent performance from this car, but we're not quite expecting supercar levels of speed and so on. The brakes aren't bad as well. It's just generally quite a nice car. I mean, you could chuck it around. You have quite a lot of fun with this one, in all honesty. Not kind of not how I expected a lowrider to deal with chiliad when I saw these cars coming for the DLC. I expected these to absolutely loathe going down a course like this. And it dealt really well. Going down this course, if you like. I mean, we're coming through bumpy sections. We're dealing with landings of jumps here with the suspension as low as it goes on this car. and it's fine. It shouldn't be. I mean, it looks painful, some of the landings. I can't imagine very comfortable inside the car, but it is dealing with all of this, all that the course can throw at it. Again, I mean, that's a heavy landing for the faction, and we're absolutely fine. I don't lose control of the vehicle. We come down the side roads, get slightly flicked sideways by a bush, get away with it. This is where we do have one slight issue. Out of this very bumpy second to last corner, there's a dip that the front of the car gets stuck in and pings out the other side. That is the only place that ever caused any issues for this car. That's because you're going downhill into the dip. So yeah, a little bit of a nasty section. And yeah, again, too much airtime, and we're certainly not going to be stopping the vehicle. I get it going. I didn't want to get stuck in the ditch again with another car. I could imagine this could quite easily get stuck down there. It's got fairly sizable overhangs at the front and back, and it is I slightly panic as I was running a bit wide there. Yeah, an incredibly low suspension, so that's why I was kind of in a hurry and banged it in reverse to get out of that section. I was amazed. I mean, you can see just how low it is. Down here, it's ridiculously low. And the faction dealt really, really well with the demands of chiliad. Was a surprisingly large amount of fun to drive. I've driven a hell of a lot worse cars down this course. And yeah, it did. I was really, really, really amazed by that one. On to the times, and it is the Franken Strange that goes quickest of this bunch of cars, a 1:31.9. It's but it's slightly quicker than the Challenger. The Faction, a 32.5. I perhaps expected all of these cars to be a little bit faster. The Franken Strange and the Faction were both pretty good cars to drive. They're decent times. They're within sort of normal road cars time. I felt like they might be a little bit faster, but you know, they're still not too bad. Too bad at times. And the Franken Strange within a second of the Moonbeam, and Moonbeam was a lot of fun to race down here. The Lurcher was the slowest of the three, a 1:33.5. You know, it goes slower than the BMW M6, but it is a bit quicker, half a second quicker than the UAZ. The Lurcher was one of those cars. It just wasn't. It didn't really like going down chiliad. It wasn't that great to drive, and I can't quite put my finger on why it is. I think perhaps the length of the car. I don't know. It just didn't really suit the particular course. Franken Strange and the Faction were good cars though to race down here. Yeah, a little bit disappointed by the times. Perhaps I expected a little bit more from them, but it is a very, very crowded area of the table around, you know, the 29s to kind of 32s. That section is very, very full of these sort of normalish road cars. So yeah, they did relatively well. Anyway, that is it for this video, guys. I'll put a link to all of the mods that I have used in the description so you can download them, have a go with them yourself. But that is it from me. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.